Tintin and the Secret of the Unicorn. So, if you've been following me on this little journey I've been doing through the Tintin series, you'll know that initially I tried to read them in order. Uh, and I got, I think, as far as The Crab with the Golden Claws, this book here, in order. But since then, I've had to jump around just because I've been getting these out of the library, and well, that's how it works with the library, right? So these two books are missing from my library. This book here had been checked out, so I jumped over to this book. Then this book here was out, so I jumped over to this book. But now this book here is back in, so I'm returning now to the Secret of the Unicorn. So they're jumping around. Sorry. One of the reasons I wanted to read these books in order is I discovered there was a continuity to them. Things happen in one book which are referenced in a previous book, or characters evolve. But jumping around isn't all bad because, I mean, we've all had this, right? Actually, this is how most people probably encounter these series, unless you get gifted a box set of them all in order. You have to jump around, and as you jump around, you see how the little pieces of the puzzle gradually fit together. And so that's one of the things I'll talk about a little bit later in this review, is how things that were established over in this book, you begin to see how some of them are set up over in this book. So sorry for the abrupt cut. I don't know what happened to my camera. It just shut off for no reason. I'll try and edit these together. Anyways, talked about this with the 7 crystal balls. But during this period here, the Nazis were occupying Belgium and controlling the newspapers. So the author, whose name I believe is pronounced something like Herge, had to go back to work under the supervision of the Nazis. There had been some controversy at the time, and perhaps is some lingering controversy, about whether or not he was morally culpable for working in the newspapers that the Nazis controlled. Now, there was nothing, I don't believe there was anything fascistic about the comics he was producing, but those comics were helping to increase the popularity of a newspaper that was under the Nazi control, and disseminating anti-Semitic viewpoints, or Nazi talking points. So I don't know. Is it ironic that this was the comic that Steven Spielberg chose to adapt? Well, this one, and this one, apparently. All elements of all of them were put into the movie. Herge himself always said that he didn't see any difference between him going back to work under Nazi occupation and like a coal miner going back to work during Nazi occupation. He just happened to be a cartoonist, but it's a lingering controversy. I mean, none of this really affects the comic, except it totally did affect the comic, actually, because the previous Tintin books, Tintin in the Land of the Soviets, Tintin in America, The Blue Lotus, had been commentaries on different parts of the world and what was happening in those parts of the world. Now that the Nazis were controlling the newspaper, Herge was not allowed to do anything political, and so these Tintin stories took a turn to more escapist fiction. So, we've got a pirate treasure hunt here, something completely apolitical. And according to Wikipedia, a lot of people think this is where the Tintin comics really came into their own as just fun adventure stories, where they weren't bogged down by the politics in the earlier stories. So perhaps paradoxically, the constraints of operating under the Nazi control helped to make this series better. Are people allowed to say that? I don't know. But this is a treasure hunt story. So starts out, Tintin buys a replica, a little replica of a ship. There are other people also interested in that ship. He eventually discovers that there are 3 ships with a treasure map inside. One of the things I've been noticing as I've been working my way through this series is how the style of storytelling is evolving. And it's not completely clear to me how much of this is due to the medium in which it was published. While the Nazis were occupying Belgium, Herge was publishing in a larger newspaper. I'm not sure if that meant he had freedom to write stuff longer. But in the early Tintin stories, there would be a bit of a mystery set up at the beginning. And then what would happen in those types of stories, like this one here or this one here, is that mystery would be in the background, but then there would be a lot of slapstick and there would be a lot of Tintin just escaping from one danger to the next. And then we would finally pick up the mystery again at the end. That is not what we get here. We get the mystery, and then the whole book is focused on the mystery. Although you can see from these pictures here, there are flashbacks. Flashbacks is probably the wrong word. There's a backstory to the pirates, but the backstory completely fits in with the mystery. So it all fits together. You do not get the sense from this story that it was serialized in newspapers and needed to have a cliffhanger every 2 pages. Which is definitely the sense you get from some of these earlier ones. Although, speaking of cliffhangers, this one does totally end on a cliffhanger. So, ends with, Red Rackham's treasure will be ours. But of course it won't be easy, and we shall certainly have plenty of adventures on our treasure hunt. You can read about them in Red Rackham's Treasure, which is the next book in the series. So it's a 2-parter. According to Wikipedia, this is the only time that Tintin breaks the 4th wall. Although, I don't really know how this works, because obviously now it's published and sold as a volume, but at the time it was serialized in newspapers, right? So presumably you just went into the next weekly installment. I don't know. But as it stands now, it's it's published in 2 parts. And as I said before, my library is missing this one. Although I've requested that they order it, so we'll see. If it comes in, I'll get around to it. If it doesn't come in, well, I guess I won't get around to it. So presumably this second one is when they actually go on the, treasure hunt part of the treasure hunt. This book here is all about them gathering the treasure map, which is hidden in 3 different locations. And spoilers, I guess, they gather it all at the end. According to Wikipedia, this is one of the few Tintin stories that takes place entirely within Belgium. They do not travel to exotic lands. I mean, except for the backstory about the pirates. But that's the backstory. Tintin himself does not travel to exotic lands in this one. He's just inside Belgium, trying to find the three pieces of the treasure map. Actually, it's not really a map, but the three pieces of parchment, which gives together the coordinates of where the treasure is at. One of the interesting things about reading this out of order, as I said before, seeing how let me just jump back quickly. One thing. Wikipedia notes that this is not the first 2-parter. Cigars of the Pharaohs and the Blue Lotus was also a 2-parter. But, as Wikipedia notes, and as I will also reaffirm, it was a little bit different because the story was pretty much wrapped up in Cigars of the Pharaoh. And the Blue Lotus was a separate story that just kind of picked up where Cigars of the Pharaoh left off. Here, though, the story is very much not wrapped up. Well, I guess it is in the sense that the arc of the story was for them to get the 3 different clues to the treasure. And I guess they got it. Okay, maybe the arc is a little bit wrapped up, but you expect from a story like this for them to go hunting for treasure, and you don't get that until the next installment. But sorry, as I was saying, one of the things about reading this out of order is you can see how the pieces begin to fit together. So when we get to the 7 crystal balls, Captain Haddock has somehow come into money, and he's somehow living at this wealthy house called the Marlin Spike, and he's got a servant called Nestor. Now, in this story, some of those pieces are beginning to come together. We are in the Marlin Spike. There is Nestor, who will go on to become Captain Haddock's servant. At this point, he's working for the bad guys. But, working for the bad guys, and even at one point wrestling with Tintin. Although he doesn't know that his employers are bad. He's just acting as a servant. Captain Haddock is already making his acquaintance at the end. First he's fighting against Captain Haddock. But then Captain Haddock finds out that Nestor can get him whiskey. So he says, Quiet, listen to me. Gentlemen, there has been a miscarriage of justice. This man is innocent, as Tintin said. Won't you take off these handcuffs, and let him go and fetch me another bottle of brandy? Brandy, not whiskey. So we're continuing the joke about Captain Haddock being an alcoholic. And continuing the joke about the dog Snowy also being an alcoholic. That's in here somehow. Oh yeah, here we go. Here's Snowy getting a hold of the alcohol. Yeah, so throughout the story, Captain Haddock is telling the story about how his ancestor got a hold of the pirates. Sorry, he's telling the backstory about how his ancestor came to be connected with this treasure. And he's doing it while he's drinking a lot. So, the pirates take up the chase. They draw closer and closer. Throats are dry aboard the unicorn. And then he drinks. He's drinking some more. He's telling the story and he's acting it out. This is the art here is quite good. Something Wikipedia mentions, and he's continuing to act it out and drink more. Sir Francis, when he came round, he found himself securely lashed to his own mast. He suffered terribly. From that blow on the head, of course. No, from thirst. Poor man, how he suffered. He keeps drinking. And then, so saying, he laughed sardonically, picked up his glass, and drained it at a gulp, like this. And then finally Tintin intervenes. He says, "That's enough, Captain. Go on with your story." Darkness fell. The pirates found the unicorn's cargo of rum, broached the casks, and made themselves abominably drunk. Abominably. Yes, abominably. That's the word. Hey, what's the idea? I only wanted to show you. You don't have to. I quite understand. So, this gag of him drinking his way through the story and coming up with reasons why he needs to drink as he's telling the story. It got a laugh out of me. There were a few good chuckles throughout this book. I don't remember what the other ones were, but I remember I remember chuckling as I read this. So, this was good. Got a few chuckles out of me. I guess it's... The only complaint, if it is a complaint, is there's no real exciting climax to this. Presumably because that's going to be coming here in this next book, which hopefully I'll get around to eventually. But, for what it is, it was a perfectly entertaining read. I'm beginning to enjoy these Tintin books more as I get into the later ones.